Row with the Queen, that led Charles to demand she get rid of her favorite courtier. The Queen was disturbed by the idea of any threat to the monarchy's focus on continuity and stability. Her private secretary, Christopher Geidt, was enlisted to help impress the need for continuity and called the entire royal staff to Buckingham Palace in May 2017. The ostensible reason for this exceptional gathering was to announce that Prince Philip was retiring from public duties. But Palace also wanted to send a message to Prince Charles once he became king. He was not to tamper with long-established timetables and traditions. Following this, Charles demanded his mother get rid of her private secretary. Very reluctantly, the Queen agreed, and Geidt announced his retirement. To show her personal gratitude for his decade of service, the Queen made him a Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order, her highest honor. At a recent dinner with friends in Mayfair, Philip joked about his determination to live beyond 95. The reason for his and the Queen's longevity, he explained amid his friends' laughter, was to keep Charles from the throne. At 91, he said, the Queen was in robust health and, he implied, could well live for another 10 years. That in turn would mean Charles might be king for only a brief period and would therefore have little opportunity to damage the monarchy. Philip did not hide his scorn for his son's achievements and vision, and showed little confidence that Charles could impress himself upon history as an exceptional king. Many of those present believed that Philip doubted whether his son, who had barely come to terms with the 20th century, could unify the country in the 21st. The rebel prince, Philip feared, would become a meddling monarch. The risk was the replacement of tact by willfulness, causing a constitutional crisis which would jeopardize the monarchy's very existence. As far as Charles was concerned, his relationship with his parents had broken down a long time ago. "My son," the Queen once complained helplessly to a nobleman, "resents me because I taught him the alphabet." Similarly, Philip believes that his son will never forgive him for his apparent sins when Charles was a boy. These include ordering him to wear corduroy trousers to a birthday party. Even as a middle-aged man, he still felt the sting of the trivial humiliation of being the only boy in courts. Since then, most of Charles's battles have been with his father, often conducted at one remove through favorite authors. In Jonathan Dimbleby's 1994 biography, the prince publicly blamed both his parents, though particularly Philip, for giving him an unhappy childhood and forcing him into an unsuitable marriage. Preoccupied by his own emotions, he showed no sympathy for the Duke of Edinburgh's own childhood as an exile, forced to move home constantly, while his mother was confined in a Swiss clinic for 8 years with paranoid schizophrenia. 7 years after the Dimbleby book, Graham Turner published a semi-authorized biography of Philip. This quoted the Duke of Edinburgh's judgment of Charles as precious, extravagant and lacking in the dedication to make a good king. Shortly after the book's publication, Philip wrote his son an apology, but in the years since then, their emotional warfare has barely abated. Why, Philip asked, did Charles undermine his parents' frugal lifestyle by indulging in extravagance? Why did he continue his affair with Camilla, whose former husband had been a brother officer? And why did he cultivate trashy American billionaires and continue to sell access to himself? Charles, for his part, found Philip's criticism intolerable. To show his disdain, he would sit in silence through family meetings at Buckingham Palace, knowing that this would annoy his father. Prince Philip, for his part, wasn't above delivering the odd put-down. In 2012, he assigned shooting rights at Sandringham to Princess Anne and her husband Tim Lawrence, and the shooting at Balmoral to Edward. For Charles, an excellent shot, this felt like a stinging insult. He had to resort to renting the challenging Invercalled estate Grouse Moor near Burkle and going to friends' estates for pheasant shoots. In November 2013, Jonathan Dimbleby, who was still friendly with Charles, predicted that, as king, he will not shy away from issues that are contentious or controversial. This was precisely what Buckingham Palace feared. The Queen, particularly, was disturbed by the idea of any threat to the monarchy's focus on continuity and stability. Those who know her well say she has a profound dislike of change. Rigidly conservative, she refuses even to allow the moving of any furniture in Balmoral from the place assigned to it by Queen Victoria. All her life, she has loved traditional ceremonial parades with pikes and axes, while Charles regards them as evidence of Buckingham Palace being stuck in the Dark Ages. He has also dismissed the monarch's birthday parade as a waste of money and feels that inspecting the guard is an unnecessary chore. This is all anathema to his mother. "Well, my father told me this," she'll still regularly say when discussing matters of state. If Charles failed to enhance the dignity of the crown, she felt, the end of her reign would become desultory and his own reign would lack majesty and grandeur. Accordingly, her private secretary Christopher Geidt was enlisted to help impress the need for continuity. In 2017, without disclosing the reason, Geidt summoned the entire royal staff to travel from Scotland, Norfolk, Windsor and the other royal estates to Buckingham Palace. By 10 a.m. on Thursday, May 4th, 500 people had gathered in the ballroom. The ostensible reason for this exceptional gathering was to announce that Prince Philip was retiring from public duties. But the true reason was something else altogether. Obliquely, the palace wanted to send a message to Prince Charles. Once he became king, he was not to tamper with long-established timetables and traditions. Philip's retirement, Geidt told his audience, was an opportunity to pause, reflect and refocus as a family. And he urged commoners and princes alike to intensify their support for the Queen. What she wanted, he went on, was for all members of her family to work as a team on official duties rather than pursue their individual interests. Their self-indulgence, as well as their discordant relations with each other, would have to come to an end, he implied. For instance, public criticism of Prince William's recent absence on a skiing holiday in Switzerland, while the rest of the royals were at a Commonwealth Day service in Westminster Abbey, could not go unheeded. After Geidt's speech, the media's headlines were reserved for glowing tributes to Philip. His retirement had served as a successful smokescreen for the Queen's serious message and no one noticed Charles's irritation. First, he disliked the melodrama of summoning 500 people to London. Second, Buckingham Palace had additionally briefed that the Queen would encourage Edward and Sophie Wessex to play a more prominent role, and he regarded that as offensive. Third, he felt that Geidt's call for loyalty to the Queen was a calculated snub to himself. And, finally, he resented the implied criticism of his personal activities and the suggestion that he would not be center stage.